Four bikers trashed Harold Wallace's yard, mocking the quiet veteran and tearing down his flag. Confident he was helpless, their leader spat at him, laughing at his silence. But Harold wasn't as powerless as they thought. One phone call was all it took to turn their arrogance into regret. Here's how it all began. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden light over the sleepy suburban street in Charleston. Harold Wallace, a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran, was seated on the porch of his modest, well-kept home. His routine was as predictable as the sunrise, a steaming cup of coffee in his weathered hand, the Marine Corps emblem on his old mug, faded but proudly displayed. Harold took a deep breath, savoring the tranquility, when the distant rumble of engines shattered the peace. Four motorcycles roared onto the street, breaking the quiet like a pack of hyenas descending on their prey. Their riders, draped in leather jackets and clinking with chains, were the kind of men who thrived on chaos. Their leader, Duke, a burly man with a beard that looked more like a bird's nest, spotted Harold. With a rev of his engine, Duke pulled up to the edge of Harold's lawn and sneered. "Well, well, what do we have here? Grandpa enjoying his retirement?" He jeered, spitting onto the pristine porch steps for good measure. The other bikers joined in, circling like vultures. One kicked over Harold's trash can, sending its contents spilling onto the neatly trimmed grass. Another pointed to the American flag fluttering proudly on a white pole in Harold's yard. "What's this?" one of them mocked, tugging at the flag. "A little too patriotic, don't you think? Time to let it go, old man." Before Harold could respond, the man yanked the flag from its post and tossed it onto the dirt, laughing as if he had just performed a magic trick. Harold set his coffee cup down on the porch railing with deliberate care, his movements slow and measured. He adjusted his glasses, his hands steady despite his age, and rose to his feet. Though his frame was wiry and his posture stooped, there was a weight to the way he moved, as if the ground itself knew better than to protest his steps. "Pick it up," Harold said, his voice calm but unyielding. His blue eyes locked onto Duke's, and for a brief moment, the biker hesitated. Then the moment passed. "Pick it up? Oh, the old man thinks he can give orders." Duke laughed, a sound as unpleasant as rusty nails scraping metal. "What are you going to do, call the bingo police?" The others howled with laughter, egging their leader on. Duke leaned forward, his face inches from Harold's. Without warning, he spat, a cruel, deliberate act meant to humiliate. The saliva hit Harold's cheek, slowly trailing down to his jaw. The laughter of the bikers died out as Harold didn't flinch. He simply reached into his pocket, pulling out a neatly folded handkerchief. Slowly, he wiped his face clean, his expression unreadable. But in his eyes, there was a flicker, something cold, sharp, and dangerous. "That wasn't your best decision," Harold said softly, his voice carrying the kind of calm that made people uneasy. For a moment, the bikers stood frozen, unsure of what to make of the man who didn't seem afraid. The air felt heavier, the morning warmth giving way to an uncomfortable chill. Duke shrugged it off with a sneer. "Yeah, what are you going to do about it, Pops?" Harold didn't answer. Instead, he stepped off the porch, his movements slow but purposeful. His hand brushed against the pocket of his flannel shirt, where something small but significant seemed to rest. The bikers didn't notice. They were too busy congratulating themselves, oblivious to the fact that they had just made a mistake they'd regret. And Harold? He was just getting started. The chapter ends with Harold standing tall on his lawn, his gaze unwavering as the bikers continued their taunts, blissfully unaware that they had picked the wrong, harmless old man to mess with. The quiet Charleston morning turned into a cacophony of destruction as the bikers, emboldened by Duke's taunts, decided to up the ante. They roared around Harold's yard like wild animals, leaving chaos in their wake. One of them, a wiry man with a laugh like a broken chainsaw, kicked over Harold's mailbox, sending its contents scattering across the grass. "Mail's here, old man." "Oh wait, you don't have a box anymore," he cackled. Another, with a tattoo snaking up his arm, picked up a rock and lobbed it at Harold's front window. The glass shattered, pieces falling like glittering rain onto the porch. The biker raised his arms in mock victory. "Oops, my bad. Hope that wasn't too expensive." Duke, ever the ringleader, strode onto the porch like he owned the place, his boots leaving dirty smudges on the polished wood. With a malicious grin, he picked up a handful of dirt from Harold's flower bed and flung it onto the porch steps. "What's the matter, Gramps? Not calling the cops? Or are you afraid they'll take too long?" Duke sneered, leaning against the railing, as if settling in for a show. Harold remained where he stood on the lawn, his expression calm and unbothered. The stillness in his posture contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of destruction around him. His eyes, however, stayed fixed on Duke, sharp as broken glass. Then it happened. The gang's attention shifted to the flag. "Hey, Duke, think he's still got some of that old patriotic pride left in him?" one of the bikers jeered. He reached for the flagpole and yanked it down, laughing as the fabric crumpled onto the ground. "You know what we should do?" the tattooed biker added, pulling out a lighter. He flicked it a few times, grinning as the small flame danced in the breeze. Duke smirked. "Yeah, let's give the old man a lesson in letting go of the past." The flame licked closer to the flag, the edges of the fabric beginning to smolder. That was the moment Harold moved. Not in a rush, not in a panic, just a slow, deliberate reach into the pocket of his flannel shirt. He pulled out an old flip phone, the kind that looked like it belonged in a museum, and began to dial. The bikers noticed immediately. "Oh no, is he calling his insurance agent?" one of them taunted, doubling over in laughter. "Or maybe his knitting club? Help! The mean bikers are wrecking my porch!" Harold didn't even glance at them. He pressed the phone to his ear and spoke with the same calm precision he'd displayed all morning. "This is Wallace, code 417. Requesting confirmation. Send the team." For a moment, the bikers paused, confused. Duke frowned, stepping closer. "Hey, old man, what kind of nonsense is this? You think we're gonna fall for your little act?" Harold hung up the phone without a word and slipped it back into his pocket. Then he met Duke's glare with an expression so steady it could have frozen water. "I think you'll find out soon enough," Harold said, his voice as even as a metronome. The confusion among the bikers quickly gave way to more jeers. "What, is a SWAT team supposed to drop from the sky now?" Duke barked, laughing as if he'd heard the punchline to a bad joke. But then, faintly at first, there was a sound. It wasn't the high-pitched whine of motorcycles or the rustle of leaves. It was deeper, heavier, an engine, low and powerful, getting louder by the second. Heads turned. From around the corner, a massive black SUV appeared, its glossy exterior gleaming in the sunlight. Behind it came a military-style vehicle, its presence commanding and unmistakable. Both vehicles rolled to a stop in front of Harold's house with a precision that spoke of professionalism. The bikers' smirks faltered. Doors opened, and from the SUV stepped a man in tactical gear, his movements smooth and practiced. Behind him, others followed, each one armed and alert. The leader of the group walked straight toward Harold, his posture respectful but firm. "General Wallace," he said, his voice steady. "We're here. What are your orders?" Harold didn't so much as blink. He glanced at Duke and his crew, who now looked less like tough bikers and more like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. "Secure the area," Harold said simply. The tactical team moved without hesitation, their efficiency like a well-rehearsed dance. Duke and his gang stood frozen, too stunned to react, as the reality of the situation sank in. The chapter ended with Harold stepping forward, brushing a speck of dust off his sleeve. His gaze never wavered, a quiet storm brewing behind his eyes. The bikers had poked the wrong bear. And the reckoning had just begun. Duke's smirk dissolved as he realized the men stepping out of the SUV weren't ordinary civilians. Their movements were precise, their faces unreadable. These weren't the kind of people you wanted to mess with. One of the soldiers, a tall man with sharp features and a voice like gravel, stepped forward. He scanned the scene, his gaze landing on the bikers. "All of you, stay where you are, hands in the air." Duke tried to act tough, puffing out his chest. "You don't scare me, we've got rights." Before he could finish, two soldiers moved in, flipping him face first into the grass with practiced ease. Duke let out a grunt as his arms were pinned behind his back. The rest of the bikers froze, their earlier confidence evaporating. Whoa, we didn't mean anything by it," one of them stammered, raising his hands. "Yeah, it was just a joke," another added, his voice shaking. The soldiers didn't respond to the excuses. They worked in synchronized silence, efficiently corralling the bikers like sheep. Harold, who had been watching from a distance, finally made his move. He stepped forward, his boots crunching softly against the gravel. All eyes turned to him as he approached Duke, who was now sprawled in the dirt, his bravado thoroughly crushed. Harold crouched slightly, just enough to meet Duke's panicked gaze. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a man who had seen far worse than a gang of wannabe tough guys. "You asked who I am," Harold said, his tone as sharp as a blade. "I'm Harold Wallace, retired commander of the United States Marine Corps." Duke swallowed hard, his earlier arrogance replaced with sheer terror. I didn't know, sir. I swear I didn't know." "You should have thought about that before," Harold replied, standing upright and brushing some imaginary dust off his shirt. He glanced at the soldiers. "Get them out of here." The team moved quickly, guiding the bikers toward their motorcycles and away from Harold's property. The once rowdy gang now looked like scolded children, muttering apologies and avoiding eye contact. Meanwhile, two soldiers carefully picked up Harold's flag from the ground. They smoothed out the dirt and expertly reattached it to the pole. The fabric caught the breeze, snapping sharply as it rose to its rightful place. Harold took a step back, admiring the sight for a moment before turning to the soldiers. "Thank you, gentlemen. That'll be all." The team nodded, climbing back into their vehicles with the same quiet professionalism they had arrived with. The roar of their engines faded as they drove away, leaving the street peaceful once again. Harold turned back to his porch, pausing to pick up his coffee mug. The contents had gone cold, but he didn't seem to mind. Taking a slow sip, he glanced at the retreating figures of the bikers, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Lesson learned," he muttered, settling back into his chair. The final image was one of quiet triumph, the American flag fluttering proudly in the breeze, the yard restored to order, and Harold, calm as ever, enjoying his morning as though nothing had happened.